From a man who burned a 76-year-old woman alive, to inmates convulsing under nitrogen death masks while witnesses watched, these are the most brutal death row executions of 2025 explained. Matthew Lee Johnson walked into a Garland, Texas convenience store on May 20th, 2012, carrying a bottle of lighter fluid. Behind the counter was 76-year-old Nancy Harris, working her shift alone. He didn't shout or threaten. He poured the fluid over her head while she begged. Then he struck the lighter. Flames roared across her body as he emptied the register, took cigarettes, lighters, and her ring. Smoke filled the store while she screamed. Johnson stepped over her, left with the money, and stripped off his burning clothes as he ran. Witnesses said he laughed. Harris died 5 days later from burns that covered nearly half her body. Johnson confessed. He told police he just wanted money for drugs. The jury didn't care. Texas sentenced him to death. For 13 years, he sat in a cell while appeals came and went. Then, on May 20th, 2025, the exact anniversary of the attack, Texas carried out the sentence. They strapped him to the gurney in Huntsville. Under state policy, Texas no longer allows custom last meals after a previous killer mocked the privilege. Johnson asked for a bowl of ice cream. The state denied it. He got the same prison tray as everyone else. Witnesses said he stared at the victim's family and didn't blink. His final words were quiet. "As I look at each one of you, I can see her on that day. Please forgive me. I never meant to hurt her." The warden nodded. The drugs entered. Johnson exhaled once, then stopped moving. The same date, the same hour, the same state that promised fire for fire. Stephen Lean Nelson walked into North Point Baptist Church in Arlington, Texas on March 3, 2011, and turned it into a crime scene. Inside were only two people, Pastor Clint Dobson, 28, and Church Secretary Judy Elliott, 69. Nelson was 24. He came to rob them. What he did instead shocked the city. He beat the young pastor until he collapsed. Then he wrapped a computer cable around his neck and strangled him. When that wasn't enough, he pulled a plastic bag over his head and tightened it until he stopped moving. He turned on the elderly secretary next. He smashed her face and skull, breaking bones and leaving her with brain hemorrhages. She survived, barely. Nelson stole their laptop, phones, credit cards, and car. Within hours, he used the pastor's cards to go shopping for clothes and food. When police found him, there was blood on his shoes. His fingerprints matched the bag over the pastor's face. A Texas jury convicted him of capital murder. For 14 years, he sat on death row while the families waited. On February 5, 2025, the state brought him to the Huntsville unit. He offered no apology. He had no final words. The warden asked if he had anything to say. He just shook his head. Needles went in. The drugs started. His chest rose twice, then stopped. The official time of death was 6:38 p.m. No priest, no music, just the sound of the air system and the heart monitor going flat. The man who killed a pastor inside his own church died the same way he lived. Silent, cruel, and surrounded by people who could only watch. Jesse Hoffman was executed in Louisiana on March 18, 2025. The state called it humane. Witnesses said it didn't look that way. Hoffman was convicted for the 2001 abduction and murder of a 25-year-old woman he grabbed from a grocery store parking lot. Her body was found days later near a riverbank, beaten and strangled. He confessed. Then he waited 24 years for the state to kill him. When his time came, he chose nitrogen hypoxia. It was supposed to be quick. At 6:30 p.m., guards strapped him into a metal chair. A clear plastic mask was sealed tight over his mouth and nose. Tubes hissed as nitrogen replaced oxygen. Within seconds, his chest started rising fast. His fingers twitched. His eyes moved under the lids. He pulled against the straps like he was trying to breathe. 2 minutes. 5 out of 10. Reporters said his body shook and tensed. His head jerked up once before slumping sideways. The mask fogged. The sound of air kept hissing as witnesses shifted in their seats. By the time the prison doctor stepped forward, Hoffman had been inside the gas for almost 20 minutes. He was declared dead at 6:50 p.m. Officials told the press it went exactly as planned. They called it controlled, efficient, humane, but the witnesses said it looked nothing like that. They compared it to the January execution of Kenneth Eugene Smith in Alabama, where the inmate convulsed for minutes before going still. Hoffman's final meal was pepperoni pizza and a chocolate milkshake. His last words were quiet. "Tell my mother I'm sorry." The gas filled the mask. He stopped moving. The room went silent, except for the hiss that was supposed to sound humane. Brad Keith Sigman was executed in South Carolina in 2025. He didn't die by needle, he picked bullets. The state built a brand new chamber for him inside the Broad River Correctional Institution. It took years to finish. Thick bulletproof glass, fresh paint, a drain in the floor for blood, a concrete wall with 5 firing ports. Behind it stood 5 trained officers, 4 rifles loaded with live rounds, 1 with a blank, all pointed at a paper target taped over his heart. Sigman was convicted of murdering his girlfriend's parents in 2001. He shot both in their Greenville County home. After she tried to leave him, he fled, hid in a motel, and was caught days later. Frasier. 24 years, the state held him while courts argued about how to kill him. When South Carolina's lethal injection drugs ran out, the governor approved the firing squad as an option. Sigman took it. At 6:05 p.m., he was strapped into a steel chair, head braced, chest bound with leather straps. The red target was placed over his heart. Reporters sat behind the glass. Witnesses said he turned his head slightly and looked at the warden. His last words were calm. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." The order came. 5 rifles fired at once. The impact slammed his body back against the chair. Blood hit the concrete. He was declared dead at 6:07 p.m. South Carolina called it efficient, clean, modern. The state hadn't granted clemency in nearly 50 years. They built a room to shoot a man and used it exactly once. Then they cleaned the walls and closed the door. Gregory Hunt murdered 32-year-old Karen Lane in Talladega County, Alabama in 1988. She was a church music director. He strangled her with a cord, stole her car, and left her body in her apartment. For 37 years, Alabama kept him alive. He walked into the chamber at Hoffman Correctional Facility, nodded to the warden, and sat in the steel chair. When witnesses filed in, he smiled through the glass and flashed a peace sign. Technicians strapped a clear mask across his face and cinched it tight. The line hissed. Pure nitrogen replaced the air. Within seconds, his chest began to rise and fall fast. His head tilted back. His shoulders jerked. Witnesses said it looked like he was trying to breathe through the mask. 2 minutes in, his hands flexed against the armrests. His body twitched. He kept moving. At 4 minutes, his neck went rigid. At 5, his jaw fell open, but his chest was still rising in short, hard bursts. The warden didn't call time until 6 minutes after the gas started. Reporters watching said he gasped for air and made shallow choking sounds. They said the mask fogged and cleared as he struggled. He was declared dead at 6:06 p.m. Alabama officials called it a smooth procedure. Witnesses called it something else. One said it looked like watching someone drown in slow motion. Hunt's final meal was fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and pecan pie. His last words were simple: "Peace to everyone." Then the nitrogen flowed. The second one looked worse than the first. Thomas Lee Gudinas abducted 22-year-old Laura Lynn Larson as she left Barbarella's nightclub in Orlando. It was 1991. She never made it home. He followed her from the parking lot, dragged her into a dark alley, and beat her unconscious. He raped her, inserted objects into her body, and left her face down near a dumpster, wearing only her bra. When police found her, she was already dead. Later that same night, another woman escaped from him. She testified that Gudinas tried to attack her too. The brutality shocked Orlando. Gudinas was caught, convicted, and sentenced to die. He spent 34 years on death row, while Florida argued about execution methods. On May 9, 2025, the waiting ended. Guards walked him into the death chamber at Florida State Prison in Stark. Witnesses sat behind the glass as he was strapped to the gurney. His last meal was a cheeseburger, fries, and soda. He didn't speak when asked for final words. At 6 p.m., the warden gave the signal. The first chemical hit. His chest rose once, then again. His foot twitched. His fingers curled. Witnesses saw small, rapid spasms in his legs. For nearly a minute, his body jerked before going still. The room stayed silent except for the hiss of air conditioning. The official time of death was 6:09 p.m. Prison officials said it went as planned. Reporters described it as uneasy to watch. The same man who once left a young woman's body half naked in the dirt twitched on the gurney as the drugs finished their work. Florida called it justice. Her family called it overdue. Demetrius Frasier broke into Pauline Starks Brown's apartment in Birmingham, Alabama in 1991. She was asleep when he kicked in the door. He woke her with a gun to her head, demanded money, and raped her. Then he shot her in the face and left her dead on the bedroom floor. Months later, he tried to assault a 14-year-old girl in Detroit. When she ran, he shot her too. She lived. He didn't get away. Frasier confessed to everything. The jury took less than 2 hours to sentence him to death. Alabama kept him on death row for more than 3 decades, while appeals piled up. In 2018, when the state offered death row inmates a choice of execution method, he signed the paper, choosing nitrogen hypoxia. The state wasn't ready. They didn't even have a mask built yet. He waited 7 more years for Alabama to catch up. On April 11th, 2025, they did. Frasier became the first inmate in Alabama to die by the method he picked himself. Guards strapped him into the chair at Hoffman Correctional Facility. They sealed a clear mask over his face and started the flow of gas. His chest began to rise and fall fast. His hands flexed. Witnesses said his head twitched for almost 2 minutes before going still. He had no final words. His last meal was a chicken sandwich, fries, and sweet tea. At 6:23 p.m., the warden declared him dead. Officials called it efficient. Reporters called it grim. He was 49 when Alabama finally killed him. 34 years after the crime, the state used the method he chose. He picked it. The state remembered. Marian Bowman shot 21-year-old Candy Louise Martin in South Carolina over a debt. It was February 16, 2001. She owed him money. He argued, pulled a gun, and shot her multiple times in a wooded area outside town. Then he dragged her body to her car, stuffed her in the trunk, and set it on fire. Flames consumed the car, while her body burned inside. His cousin, James Taiwan Gadsden, told police he watched it happen. The murder weapon was later pulled from a river. Bowman denied it, then confessed. A jury convicted him of murder and arson. He was sentenced to death. For 24 years, South Carolina kept him on death row. On March 21, 2025, the state brought him into the death chamber at Broad River Correctional Institution. Before his execution, he ordered one of the largest last meals the state had ever approved: fried seafood, chicken wings, chicken strips, onion rings, banana pudding, and German chocolate cake. He ate most of it, then guards walked him to the chair. He made a short final statement. Death row inmates may be labeled as the worst people, but we're still human. Witnesses said he looked calm as the injection began. The drugs hit his veins at 6:04 p.m. His chest lifted twice, then stopped. He was declared dead minutes later. Officials called it routine. Reporters wrote that the smell of burned food still lingered from his meal when they wheeled his body out. He shot a 21-year-old woman over a few dollars. He dragged her, locked her in a trunk, and burned her alive. Then, 24 years later, he asked for cake before the state killed him. Richard Lee Tabler murdered 4 people in Texas and kept threatening to kill more. In 2004, he shot nightclub manager Mohammed Ramouni and his friend Haitham Zayed in cold blood. Then he hunted down 2 teenage girls who worked there, 20-year-old Roxanne Townsend and 18-year-old Tiffany Dotson. He lured them to a remote spot and executed them. Police said the motive was simple: revenge and power. Tabler called officers from his own cell phone after the killings to brag about it. When they arrested him, he told them they hadn't seen anything yet. Even on death row, he didn't stop. He called the governor's office from a smuggled phone, saying he could have people killed outside the prison. Guards found his contact list. It included the names of officials and victims' relatives. The threats never stopped, and neither did the fear. Texas waited 21 years to end it. On February 13, 2025, the state brought him to the Huntsville unit. Witnesses said he looked emotionless as guards strapped him down. The warden asked for final words. For the first time, he spoke softly. "I'm sorry. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm sorry for what I've done." The first drug entered his veins at 6:14 p.m. His lips parted, his eyes rolled slightly. Within seconds, his chest stopped moving. He was declared dead 6 minutes later. The man who called police to brag about killing 4 people died quietly while they watched. Texas didn't forget the threats. The same state he tried to intimidate strapped him to a gurney and silenced him for good. Oscar Franklin Smith murdered his ex-wife and her 2 teenage sons inside their Nashville home. It was October 1st, 1989. Judy Smith was 35. Chad was 16. Jason was 13. They were found stabbed and slashed dozens of times. Chad's throat was cut so deep it nearly severed his head. Jason was found with a kitchen knife still lodged in his neck. Blood covered the walls and carpet. Investigators discovered a single bloody handprint on a phone left off the hook. That print made the case famous. Smith was missing 2 fingers. Prosecutors said the unique pattern matched his damaged hand perfectly. He said it was impossible. For more than 30 years, he claimed he was innocent. The appeals never worked. In 2025, Tennessee ended the argument. On May 23rd, at Riverbend Maximum Security Institution, they strapped the 74-year-old to the gurney. Reporters sat behind the glass. He turned his head toward them. His final words were aimed at the governor. "Someone needs to tell the governor the justice system doesn't work. I didn't kill her." The first drug entered at 6:11 p.m. His lips moved once more, forming words no one could hear. Then his breathing slowed. His eyes closed. He was pronounced dead at 6:18 p.m. Smith's last meal was pork chops, fried okra, coleslaw, and a slice of strawberry cake. His final act was to repeat what he had said for decades, that Tennessee was killing the wrong man. The state called it justice, the family called it closure, but the handprint with the missing fingers is still the image people remember. He said they were killing the wrong man. They killed him anyway. Aaron Brian Gunches kidnapped his girlfriend's ex-boyfriend and drove him into the Arizona desert to kill him. The man's name was Ted Price, left his body on the side of a dirt road, and drove away. Months later, he shot at a state trooper during a traffic stop. The officer survived. Gunches ran, started a chase across counties, and was finally caught hiding inside a barn. He confessed to everything. The jury sentenced him to death, but Gunches didn't fight it. He wanted it. On death row, he filed letters asking Arizona to hurry up. He wrote that he was tired of waiting and wanted his sentence carried out. He even accused the state of dragging its feet. After 22 years, he finally got what he kept asking for. On March 19, 2025, at the Florence State Prison, he ate his last meal, a double Western burger, spicy gyros, onion rings, and baklava. Witnesses said he looked calm, even impatient, as he entered the chamber. At 10:05 a.m., guards strapped him to the gurney. The warden asked if he had final words. Gunches said only one sentence: "Let's get it done." The first drug entered his veins. His chest lifted once. His hands twitched slightly. Within a minute, his head slumped to the side. He was declared dead at 10:13 a.m. Arizona called it smooth. Reporters called it strange. The man who begged for death finally got it. The same desert where he dumped Ted Price was just miles away from where the state ended his life. Some killers fight to stay alive. Aaron Brian Gunches reminded them. Anthony Wright escaped a North Carolina prison in 1994. 2 days later, he kidnapped a mother of two in Florida. Her name was Carmen Gay Hart. She was 23, a nursing student loading groceries into her car at a supermarket parking lot. Wright and another escaped inmate, Richard Hamilton, grabbed her, forced her into her car, and drove off. She never showed up to pick up her children that afternoon. Her body was found dumped in the woods outside Pensacola. She'd been shot in the face. The escape and the murder shocked 2 states. Wright was caught, tried, and sentenced to death. He spent the next 30 years fighting appeals from a cell in Florida. Every motion failed. Every request for clemency was denied. By 2025, he had been on death row longer than the victim had been alive. On April 4th, 2025, at Florida State Prison, guards walked him into the execution chamber. He didn't struggle. He didn't speak much. His last words were mumbled, and some of them were too quiet for reporters to understand. When asked if he had any final statement, he said, "I'm ready." Witnesses said he looked up once toward the ceiling before closing his eyes. At 6:03 p.m., the first chemical hit his veins. His body gave one short exhale, then stilled. He was declared dead at 6:10 p.m. Outside the prison, Hart's sister spoke to reporters. 3 decades is too long to wait for justice. Wright escaped once. He couldn't escape the state. 30 years after the murder of a young mother in a grocery store parking lot, Florida kept its promise. He ran. Florida waited. George John Hansen carjacked a 77-year-old woman and killed the man who saw it. It was August 31st, 1999, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The woman's name was Mary Agnes B. She was loading bags into her car at the Promenade Mall when Hansen and his accomplice, Victor Miller, grabbed her. They forced her into the car and drove off. A passing trucker, Gerald Max Thurman, saw the struggle and called it in. That call cost him his life. Hansen spotted him following and stopped the car. They pulled the trucker out and shot him 4 times on the side of the road. Then they turned back to the 77-year-old woman in the car. They shot her 4 to 6 times, dumped her body in a field, and left both victims dead. The car was found abandoned miles away. The brutality stunned Tulsa. Police caught Hansen days later. His fingerprints were inside the car and on the shell casings. He blamed Miller. Miller blamed him. The jury didn't care. Both were convicted. Hansen was sentenced to death. He sat on Oklahoma's death row for 26 6 years, while appeals circled the same verdict. In 2025, the state finally carried it out. On May 14, 2025, at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAllister, Hansen was strapped to the gurney. Witnesses said he stared straight ahead. When asked for last words, he said, "Tell my family I'm sorry." At 10:04 a.m., the first drug entered his veins. His chest rose once, his lips moved, then nothing. He was pronounced dead at 10:11. 2 innocent people died for nothing. A 77-year-old woman and the man who tried to help her. In Hansen's case, if you saw it, you died. Stephen Stanko murdered 2 people in South Carolina and still feared how the state would kill him. He was sentenced to death for bludgeoning and strangling his girlfriend, Laura Ling, and shooting her teenage daughter, Connie, in 2005. The crimes were brutal, and the scene inside their Georgetown home looked like a massacre. When South Carolina restarted executions in 2025, inmates were given a choice: electric chair, firing squad, or lethal injection. Stanko thought about it. He asked about the new firing squad chamber, the same one used on Brad Keith Sigman months earlier, with bulletproof glass and a drain for blood. Reports said it was quick but violent. Witnesses had described the sound of impact and the body slamming back in the chair. Stanko changed his mind. He picked lethal injection. On June 13, 2025, the state brought him to the chamber at Broad River Correctional Institution. His last meal cost $20, a cheeseburger, and ice cream. He ate most of it. When asked for final words, he gave a long, 3.5-minute speech about redemption and forgiveness. "I hope no one defines me by the worst day of my life," he said. At 6:04 p.m., the warden gave the signal. The first drug entered his veins. His breathing slowed. His mouth moved slightly, still forming words. Within 2 minutes, his eyes closed. By 6:10, he was gone. Even a man who killed a woman and her teenage daughter didn't want the state's newer options. He saw what firing squads looked like in 2025 and chose the needle instead. He feared pain more than death itself. Richard Gerald Jordan kidnapped a young mother and spent nearly half a century waiting for Mississippi to kill him. It was in Gulfport, 1976. Jordan targeted 34-year-old Edwina Martyr, the wife of a bank executive and mother of 2 small children. He lured her from her home, promising to deliver a ransom note. Instead, he drove her into the woods, made her kneel, and shot her once in the back of the head. He dumped her body, threw the gun into a river, and called her husband to demand $25,000. Police traced the calls and caught him within days. The murder weapon was pulled from the water exactly where he said he tossed it. The trial was quick. The jury convicted him, and the sentence was death. But Jordan's appeals stretched longer than any inmate in state history. For 49 years, he sat on death row at Parchman Prison, while judges, governors, and lawyers cycled through his case. He watched new methods come and go: lethal gas, electric chair, lethal injection. Every attempt to stop it failed. On February 8, 2025, Mississippi finally carried it out. Jordan was 79 years old. Witnesses said he looked frail as guards strapped him down. When asked for final words, he spoke softly. "I hope that my death brings peace. I am sorry for the pain I caused." The warden gave the signal. The injection began. His chest rose twice. His lips trembled. Then he went still. The official time of death was 6:23 p.m. Nearly half a century after he pulled the trigger on a young mother, the state returned the shot in its own quiet way. Sometimes the brutality isn't how they kill you, it's how long they make you wait.